Hello, everyone. Good evening. I'm Susan Call. I'm the events advisor here at the bookstore. And on behalf of our owners and our entire staff, it is my pleasure to welcome you to Politics and Prose. Before we get started, a few familiar housekeeping items. Please remember to silence your cell phones. During the Q&A, we have a microphone right there. If you could step up to it with your question, that would be great because we are recording this event. We have books behind the register. You're going to want to pick up a book because Naomi will be signing right here after the event. And if you don't mind helping us by folding up your chairs and leaning them against something, that would be great. And be sure to pick up one of our holiday gift guides, Plan a Heist to Save the World from Tech Giants. Kirkus was the winner of the 2017 Bailey's Women's Prize for Fiction and was longlisted for the 2017 Orwell Prize, and also made Obama's list of favorite books of that year. And it's recently been turned into a series on Amazon Prime Video. And Alderman will be in conversation with Kara Swisher, who's the author of the upcoming Burn book, which will be out in March, or no, late February, she just told me. She's the host of the podcast On with Kara Swisher and the co-host of the Pivot podcast. And in addition to many other accolades, she was a former contributing opinion writer for the New York Times and a host of its Sway podcast. And she's also worked for the Wall Street Journal and the Washington Post. So please help me give a warm welcome to Naomi Alderman and Kara Swisher.
Okay, I'm totally buying this book. Louise Gluck, she just died. She's amazing. Not going to steal it, but I would.
That is the trouble with coming to a bookstore.
Yeah, she's my favorite poet. So
Amazing.
I just saw it there while we were standing. Well, we have a lot to talk about.
We certainly do.
So I know a lot of billionaires, and you've written about a few.
Well, I want to know how
fictionally.
accurate I was.
Somewhat. I don't care as long as they die. No, I'm teasing a little bit. Line of the book is very striking, and part of it. One of the characters is Lenk Sketlish. Is that correct?
Sure.
Yeah. He is who?
All right. He runs a social network which has some things in common with some other social networks. It's called Fantail in the book. There are three big technology companies in the book. Fantail, that is a social network. Anvil, that is a sends you everything you want company, and Medlar, that's the name of a kind of fruit that makes hardware. Brilliant hardware that everybody wants.
So we essentially have Mark Zuckerberg, Jeff Bezos, and Steve Jobs' widow.
You might say that,
yes.
But I couldn't possibly comment.
I would say that. I know them all very well. So,
excellent.
So the character who and
I don't want to get sued.
Okay, all right, okay. That's for me to have happen to me. So your first line is on the day the world ended, Lenk Sketlish sat at dawn beneath the redwoods. Oops, sorry, I just closed. In a designated location of natural beauty and attempted to inhale from his navel. That sounded familiar. Talk about why you started off like this.
Oh, I love that it sounded familiar. Do you feel that they're thinking a lot about their own navels?
They'll talk about things like this.
Right. Well,
yeah.
I've worked.
Have you done navel breathing, Kara? That kind of thing.
Have you?
No.
No. Have you attempted to have your sinuses cleaned out with various solutions, etc.?
No, but they do all those things.
They do all that, yeah. So, right. So I've worked in technology for 20 years or so. I make a game called Zombies Run, which is a fitness game. Oh, hello. You run a 5. Yeah, that's Run a 5. So that's from my zombie game. Right. So I've worked in startups, and startups are bloody good fun and exciting. And I'm also very aware of the culture there, which is, I'm sure you have seen Adam Curtis's series of films, All Watched Over by Machines of Loving Grace. So he talks a lot about how California's self-actualization culture from the 60s, 70s, and 80s then gets fed straight into the rise of startups, big technology. And that's the reason, they're coming from this place of, I feel stupid telling you, Cara, but I'm going to do it anyway.
Okay, go ahead. Because I usually have men explaining tech to me, which is always enjoyable. Go right ahead.
Well, at least I interrupt myself periodically and
Please
go,
go
"This
ahead.
is ridiculous."
Right.
So I've witnessed this. You know, I actually used to work with Michael Acton Smith, who founded the company Calm, and nothing in this book is specifically based on him. In order to avoid being sued, I'm saying that all the time. But no, it really isn't. But I also, you know, there's that we can save the world, we can change the world for the better. There's a sort of cult-like element drawing people into working in the companies, and you really feel like, oh, I could make something that it's just really makes a difference in people's lives. And that feels like that's very inflected by the self-help culture. So I started there going, this is the kind of person he is. He does believe in these he says that, you know, he goes meditation is hokey, but it works. You know, he believes in it. And yet at the same time as meditating, the companies are shifting more and more and more towards being these huge engines of pure capitalism and finding new capitalist fields to plow, which is our human sanity.
Right, exactly. So talk a little bit what prompted you to do this. I'll give away the first night of my book coming up is actually, oddly enough, So It Was Capitalism After All, which I think that sums up my experience of 30 years of Silicon Valley. So talk a little bit about what prompted you. Was it the growing fear of that, which occurred to not that many people, because it was started on this idea of we're going to save the world, we're here to do better, we don't care about money, we don't care about titles, but of course they care about all those things.
Of course they do.
So what prompted you to do that?
I think I had bought into it as much as, and you know, when I started working in startups, I thought, oh, this is great. This is going to be a different way of thinking about how the world could be. I'm one of those early adopters. You know, I was on Twitter in autumn of 2006, so which is pretty early as those things go, and I was fascinated and moved by it. And the more I look at it, the more distressed I've become. And one of the things actually that prompted me to think about it was Bill Gates picked my book as a book of the year, the previous book. Yeah, The Power. And then I thought, oh, well, if I've got their attention, I might try to do something with that. And I think also, you know, we're living, obviously, right now with AI, which I'm sure we'll talk about at some point.
Yes, we will.
It feels like the pace is accelerating. Maybe because I've been on Twitter for so long, and maybe because I've been thinking about this for so long, I feel like I end up... Okay, this is going to sound very self-aggrandizing, but fuck it. Like when you've worked with this a lot, you sort of look through what's happening to the matrix source code going there, and you start to see the same arguments play out the same way over and over again on social media, and every iteration I see more and more kind of ordinary people who were not interested in tech get swept up in it. So, God, right now in the UK there's a move to remove protections from trans people from our equalities legislation, and I've sort of seen that gather steam from being a very niche little argument between a few ultra radical feminists and a few people who decided they wanted to argue with them in a tiny corner of the internet. But you know, this is the nature of algorithmic iteration, is that the algorithm will latch onto it and show that to more and more and more people until eventually, you know, people whose life this doesn't touch in any way, who are not trans people, who are not the parents of a trans child, who are not, you know, involved in this, and suddenly feel like this is something on which they have to have a real urgent opinion, which is very serious. And I found that quite horrifying, that I start to perceive people learning to think like the machines would like us to think, which is to say, take a position, fight for it, you know, whatever you're saying on the internet is very, very important, and you've got to go and do that more and more.
So when you think about what you've set up here, is the tech billionaires are the villains in this story, correct? Or is that...
Yeah, I think that's correct. You know, you may tell me either that I haven't done it enough or that I've done it too much. I've tried to humanize them. I'm not interested in writing characters who have, you know...
You weren't doing The Circle here, which was a version of that.
Yeah, I think I've seen a couple of things. So there's the Circle, which is like, that's, you know, a sort of determined evil. There's Glass Onion, which is actually they're stupid, which I also don't believe. And there's also the guy in Succession, Lucas Matson, who's sort of low cunning, but also kind of not very interesting. And I don't perceive that. Having worked with people who are now, you know, very powerful and wealthy within the technology industry, although, you know, none of the people who are the heads of these organizations, I don't see them as dumb, and I don't see them as intending to be evil. I think they are an object lesson in how far you can get. Well, as you say, it was capitalism after all. How far you can get down a terrible road while still continuing to think of yourself as an amazing good person who has provided fantastic things to the world. I find that very interesting.
Yeah. Well, it's taken a different turn, I think, if I think about it, is it started off as that we are going to change everything. And this sort of, we're going to wear sweats and flippy floppy clothes. And
every office is going to have foosball.
Right, exactly. Many years ago, when the company called Excite, if you remember, it was not Yahoo and it was not Google, essentially, but it was in that genre. They had a slide in the middle of their... You went down the slide. And I was 40 at the time, and they said, "Oh, go down the slide." And I go, "No, I'm 40. I'm not going to go down the slide." And they were like, "Everyone goes down the slide." And I go, "And yet I didn't like it when I was 4. So I'm pretty sure I'm not going to do it now. Like, it's not happening for you." And what was interesting was the juvenilization, the softness of everything, the soft clothes, the soft shoes, the soft foods, and the toddlerization.
Yeah.
And so I tend to call them all adult toddlers in a lot of ways,
and
with all that brings.
Right. Adult toddlers, almost all men.
Well, yes.
Yes.
I'm sorry, man. I have 3 sons. I'm sorry. But
no, there's not. I like men. It's just that when an industry is very geared towards one sector, you have to say to yourself, why is that? And what effect is it having? And so one of the characters in the novel, Martha, is the sort of office mum, which I've also witnessed, where there'll be, you know...
solicitous women who help them.
Right, solicitous women who help them. And... you know, at the end of the day, it was capitalism. It was also sexism. It was exactly all those things that they thought that they could say, oh, this needn't concern us anymore. I mean, I have been in 2 startups now where I was the most senior person to end up not being able to cash out. And that's happened in 2 completely different ways. And yet I'm looking at that going, I was the only woman up there. Yeah.
On the cap table.
Yeah. And I was the only one who ended up not being able to cash out. So, like, you know, my novels are doing fine. I'm fine.
So let's go back to the novel. You got the inspiration from the story in the New Yorker about survival bunkers, which we all read. Talk a little bit about what the setup here is. The world is ending. The world is ending, and they know it because of algorithms. They know what's going to happen and how it's going to happen. So they build one of these bunkers. Explain the bunkers, because they do exist in real life.
They do exist. So, yeah, I hope everybody's familiar with the bunkers. They're
Explain what's happening
awful.
with wealthy people.
Right. So there are wealthy people, and there was a brilliant piece about this in the New Yorker in 2017, and I think Douglas Rushkoff's just written,
has written a book
Survival of the Richest, which is also about these bunkers. They think that if an extinction level event happens to human beings, which they think is likely enough that they've built the bunkers, that they're going to be able to go to these places.
2% chance, according to
2%. That's a large chance.
I agree.
Yeah.
One of them asked me, someone very famous, I'm not going to say who it is, but explained their whole apocalypse plan to me. Like, they had a motorcycle in their garage that went to their place in Big Sur that locks down, that goes underground, and this is how much food they have. And they said, "What is your survival plan?" I said, "I'm coming to your house, killing you, taking your motorcycle and going to your house."
Right.
And I said, "You're little. I can take
there
you."
you go.
You know,
Yeah.
me and a few lesbians will form a militia
Excellent.
at the ridge. Well, you
Yeah,
know,
I'm
and
coming
we'll
to
take
your
it.
house
Yes,
and
that's
following
right.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they have plans.
I mean, the problem. Okay.
They've learned to fly helicopters. They have motorcycles. They
Right.
they've built in every contingency for when, and some of it in this book was they go to New Zealand, which is hard to get to because you have to have someone fly you there, and then you have to keep their family not dead.
Right. So yes, one of the things that keeps coming up in the book is like, how far back do you plan? Because you've got to have a pilot that's always available to you. But I mean, I don't know. I haven't talked to them about it. I imagine some of them do have a pilot who's just like there, and they're looking after the pilot, and they're looking after the pilot's family. And, you know, just if you've got that amount of money, that's what you're going to do. You know what?
So this inspired you.
This
You
inspired
said,
me, yeah.
These guys have a contingency plan.
Yeah. So it made me feel a lot of feelings and think a lot of thoughts. One thing is, this is science fiction. And these are people who have read a lot of science fiction. In that sense, you know, they're my landsmen. You know, we've read the same stuff, and they have taken it very seriously. And in some cases have said, we're going to build this. And in other cases have gone, well, I'm going to protect myself against this. For what it's worth, I think the specific fears around a super intelligent, sentient AI come very specifically from a single story, which is called I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream by Harlan Ellison. And you read that story and go, oh, this is what they're frightened of. They've read about it. They then are sort of writing a little science fiction story in their head about how they are going to escape. The science fiction story is informed by, capitalism again, rugged individualism. If you have enough money and you make yourself kind of hench enough, then you're going to be fine even when the zombies invade. And obviously I've spent a decade now thinking about zombies. And not only do I think that it is morally wrong, I also think it is factually wrong. The way that people survive terrible things is by working together in a community, in fact, history shows us, rather than any kind of lone individual survivor out there somehow making it, or even, you know, so
this inspired you, this idea of radical selfishness, radical money, money, untold wealth that is beyond anyone on the planet since it's existed.
Right.
And you said, I'm going to create a book about these people who want to do this and those who want to stop them.
Right. Correct. Yes. Right. So there are in the novel there are 4 characters who get together. One is there's an executive assistant, a soon-to-be ex-wife, an ousted co-founder, and the non-binary child of one of these people, who get together and say, "We have got to stop them. We have got to." And I suppose, you know, I say this as a joke, but it's not completely a joke. I think probably some of those people do have to stop them. I'm not going to say they should do what I say in the book, but I think that knowing people who work in technology, a lot of them are really smart, actually quite sophisticated, deep thinkers who I think are aware that they're part of something that they didn't intend to be. And I would like them to know that the rest of us are saying, please do something. Because, you know, I read Mark Andreesen's submission on AI this week.
As I like to call it, a nonsensical piece of shit. But go ahead. Go ahead. I'll give you my thoughts on that in a second.
I would love to hear your thoughts. Next, like, can we do this for a while, and then I'll interview you?
No.
No, okay.
He's a narcissistic prick. But go
Okay,
ahead.
all right. I mean, he does seem to be. Yes, that does check out. Yeah.
Known him for 30 years.
Right.
That's really where it come down.
I think so. In there, it says a thing where if we were to try to pay back everybody whose work we have taken to train our AIs, our company would no longer be viable.
Right, that's correct.
Right.
Yes.
So they know that they've stolen a bunch of stuff from all of us. Every single one of us. I mean, all of my novels have been used for this without my permission. They've taken it without any of our permission. And I
We
look
did
at
it before and it worked.
right, and I look at it and I go, there's something really fundamentally wrong with you, that you can't see that if you've taken something from everybody in the world, that you then owe it to give that back to the world. And, you know, you can be the hero to do that if you want to. And it's not very complicated. What the world needs is what it's always needed. Use your money and power, feed the hungry, house the homeless, care for the vulnerable, which includes right now our natural world. That's it. Mm-hmm. It's been the same for thousands of years. And what the fuck is wrong with them? That they've got to this stage where they're saying, yeah, we don't own any of this, but we're taking it anyway. Mm-hmm. And at no point has anybody got a value between them to go, oh, maybe we should do something different with this.
Some of them do.
So, do they?
Many.
Do
Yeah,
they? Okay. How
Very
can we
small.
get those ones in charge of
I
more
think
stuff?
what's interesting is the essay she's referring to is by Mark Andreessen, who created the internet browser, the Netscape, the Mosaic browser. He was among a group of people that did it, but he took much of the credit.
That's always the secret as well.
Yeah.
There's always a huge team,
but
and then
he benefited the most from it, I
Yeah.
would say. He went on to work at Netscape, which failed. Lots of reasons, including Microsoft putting it out of business, but it also was a terrible business and would have failed on its own. He then worked for AOL when AOL bought Netscape, lasted there, and then became a venture capitalist and has done pretty well. Not great necessarily. He backed WeWork.
Yeah.
Coming soon to a bankruptcy court near you. He just backed his latest one too, which is a apartment WeWork essentially. They backed, things have gone up, gone down. They've had some good things, some bad things. Did not back Uber, I think, correct? I'm correct, but then backed the one that failed. Anyway, they go up and down like all venture capitalists. And this essay is about AI, generative AI. And this was a firm in Silicon Valley that did a lot of crypto investing, including with Sam Bankman-Fried, and has made a very significant investment in Twitter with Elon. And so, they're geniuses. And so what this essay is, which it's a false straw man argument, which essentially says, if you don't like AI, you're evil. And if you're not with us, you're against us. When all you might say is, AI could be pretty amazing for the human race. Mm-hmm. Why don't we all figure out the guardrails we need to put around it? Maybe killer robots, maybe not this, maybe not that. Anyone who wants to put any guardrail around it is evil. And you are wrong. This is what the essay says.
Okay, I have a question for you.
Sure.
Which this is.
I want to get to your book.
Oh yeah. No.
Go ahead.
I know this is not the way it's spoke, but this is an opportunity. Okay. Who's aware of Rocco's basilisk? Somebody is. I'm going to ask this question, then I'm going to explain it. Do you think that they believe any of them in Rocco's basilisk? Like, the more I look at what's going on with AI, the more I think.
Explain what that is.
Okay. All right. So Rocco's basilisk is, it comes out of a forum called Less Wrong, which is one of the effective altruism forums, which obviously that was the philosophy of Sam Bankfraud. And they're talking about AI. And then one of them, a user called Rocco, says, I've just had this thought. When the super intelligent super AI comes into being, would it not be rational? They're big on rationality, as if human beings are ever rational. Would it not be rational for that super intelligent AI in the future to track down anyone who did not help it to come into being and to torture them for eternity? And if they are dead, to create huge numbers of simulated versions of them to torture for eternity. This then causes a huge, enormous meltdown on the Less Wrong forums. And in fact, Elon comes in at one point and says,
Shocker.
Yeah, we have to stop talking about this now. Mm-hmm. Because the more people who know about Rocco's basilisk, the more people who are caught up in this. Now, I mean, I don't want to drop names, but I have a degree in philosophy from Oxford, and everything in Rocco's basilisk is incorrect. Number one, I'm not sure why I should care about simulated versions of me. That seems like that's a computer torturing itself. Like, I'm not there, I'm here. And the idea that that is somehow rational is a very weird, narrow definition of rationality. And also, you cannot cause that AI to exist by thinking about it. That's just not how reality works. However, the more I see them continuing to pursue this AI at the same time that they're saying, please, somebody tie our hands, the more I think that they believe it. And they believe that if they talk about it, they will get us all embroiled in it. So they have to ask us to stop them without knowing about Rocco's Basilisk, because if we don't know about it, then we're not involved in it. It's a new internet religion, in my view. You can go and Google it. I would love to know if you think any of them believe in it.
I think some of them are. I think the doom scrolling is. This is people in the AI world who think it's going to kill us. It's essentially the Terminator model. Is that it's going to build a time machine.
Right. It's going to build Skynet. It's going to
Right. This is a group of people, and some of them have. There are ways it could go wrong. Mostly from people.
Yes.
I'm not scared of AI. I'm scared of people
Correct.
using AI.
Yes. The way it goes wrong is if we trust it.
Or we let other people manipulate it. I think there's a group of people that are very sunny about that it's going to solve cancer and everything else, and it certainly could. It certainly has the capability.
Right. The protein folding stuff has been incredible.
Right, incredible. And there's no in between. They dislike in between, where you can see both. They don't like the weapon. I have the weapon and tool philosophy, which is a knife is a weapon and a tool. The internet's a weapon and a tool.
Yep.
It could be used either way.
Yeah.
It's which one are we going to pick? Which one are we going to advantage? Which one are we going to limit? Essentially. And so when you set them up at the end of the world, there's been a lot of these ideas. Don't Look Up was like that. They were going to go off and create another universe. And there's been innumerable sci-fi movies about the rich people living above and the poor people living below. When you set up this idea of surviving the end of the world and creating a new society, I want you to argue why that's not a bad thing.
Well, I would say that one of the things that I do with the book is to highly problematize this question across the book. So I don't want to give any spoilers, but it, I think, becomes clear through the book that the idea that they have that they will be psychologically fine if they have managed to survive and doomed the rest of the world already indicates that they're not psychologically fine. Anybody who thinks that they could do that and be okay is already not a good person to be in charge of pretty much anything. I'm sure everybody here probably has read The Power Broker, the Robert Caro book about the great architect of New York, Robert Moses. I read it for the first time this year, and I want to get into this, where the more powerful people get, for a lot of different reasons, the more they experience the toxic effects of power. And the idea that you can live in a fortress and be, that's also capitalism, actually. And this I keep coming back to in the book, is capitalism ideally wants us all to believe that we need to own one of everything and that we have to, live in our own homes, and ideally, we have all of our objects and we don't need other people because, capitalism doesn't make any money out of friendship. Somebody wrote that the book is anti-capitalist, which I'm not anti-capitalist, actually. I am in favor of a mixed system. I think capitalism has done wonderful things. Also, we need charities. Also, we need governments. Also,
I want you to talk about that, what happens with power. When you see people, and different people shift in different ways. It surprised me of who's done very well, who's a very decent person, has remained decent despite the enormous wealth.
What do you think makes the difference, though?
It depends on the person. I think the people who are bad were bad to start with.
Right.
That most of them.
Right. That's the Robert Caro thought.
I feel that parenting, when I meet their parents, I learn a lot about them.
Yeah.
I think Elon's parents are feral. I don't know what else to say.
Yeah.
Both of them in some way. Although that doesn't. Lots of people's parents are feral and they're lovely people.
Right. Correct. Yes. It's not an excuse, but it is a reason.
But I tend to look at how they take negative things that happen to them and how they move into victimhood rather quickly. One of the things that strikes me among a lot of very powerful people is how much they feel a victim.
Yeah.
Or that they're being attacked.
Yeah.
The fact that I constantly get, Carrie, you're so mean to us. I'm like, get a fucking dog. I don't know what to tell you.
my
Like,
God.
I have no power over you, right?
Right.
Like, I don't know what you could have me killed and dismembered in seconds and you wouldn't find me again. kind of
This
thing.
is fascinating.
Right.
I mean,
But, let me ask you a question about
No.
powerful
I
things.
want to respond to this.
Well, what happens to a lot of them, though, is, and I think this is where it goes wrong, is, and I did the Succession podcast also for HBO, and one of the things they depicted very well there was how smaller and smaller their worlds get and how more comfortable they
Yeah.
get. It's like a cashmere prison.
Right.
And so the spaces become tight. They can't ever leave. And the very last scene with, I'm sorry if you haven't seen it, but it's too late. I don't care if I give it away. Where Calkins'
Shiv
character,
and-
Calkins' character
yeah.
is sitting in a bar. He's free.
Yeah.
He finally is with other, in a real place where real people are. And before he moved from the plane to the car to the expensive apartment to the expensive restaurant or
Right.
something like that. One of the things when you're talking about a bunker, it's that.
It's that.
They live in these smaller and smaller, from the plane to the car, with a group of enablers around them, constant enablers. And if the enablers turn bad, they become bad people. Like and then they get told every day that everything they're saying is correct. They get licked up and down all day, so to speak, and they are always told. And so when when someone says, "What are you doing?" they can't react anymore, and they feel attacked. Talk a little bit about this idea of bunker, because that's what they have.
Right.
Is this, and there's, let me read a quote.
I
from
love
the
everything
book.
you're saying. Just
Let me
whilst
give
you're finding it,
let me
I'm
give
going
you
to.
a quote from
Okay,
the
go
book.
on.
Len
Go on.
Skeltish was a powerful man who had built his career on the future, knowing it, smelling it, feeling it more present around him than the present. The future was his home and his consolation, the urgency of tomorrow, the next decade. I think this explains a lot about the mentality, is they cannot live in the present or fix the present because they're always leaning into a future, which is the name of the book, obviously.
Right.
So talk a little bit about why you named it that.
Oh, God. Well, look, first of all, I want to say what you're talking about is the same thing in, do you know David Foster Wallace's essay, A Supposedly Fun Thing I'll Never Do Again, which is about the experience of going on a cruise and becoming increasingly irritated by tinier and tinier things going wrong. So to start out with, and I think it's wonderful. We've all had that experience. We have it with our technology. The first time that you see that Google Maps can take you where you need to go, you're like, oh my God. And then by the end, you're just like, oh, why is the dot here and not on the other side of the road? For fuck's sake.
Yeah.
And they're welcoming us into that experience. So absolutely what you're saying is the bunker becomes a bunker mentality. The idea that you can solve all problems in life for yourself becomes in itself a terrible trap. You have to experience the fullness of human existence. Sorry if that comes as news to people. The fullness of human existence includes frustration and annoyance. And actually, I mean, this is the terrifying part, is the more you have to trust people, the more you realize that people are trustworthy. And the less you have to trust people, the more you believe that people are not trustworthy. So, I don't know, to pick tiny examples, like in the pandemic, if you needed your neighbor to help you out with something because you were sick and you needed, then you had to trust somebody, and you discover the majority of the time, everybody's happy to help out. That's what normal people are like. If you never have to do that, then you become increasingly frightened. So it's a question of like what thoughts you're practicing every day. So yes, I called the book The Future. I thought a lot about what was the essential problem. There is actually a chapter called The Essential Problem. And I do some work in the book of linking this into human history as well. The problem for human beings is that we know that there's a future, which, as far as we can tell, most other animals don't seem to spend all their time thinking about the future. And this seems to be where we have got ourselves into a lot of trouble, including, our earliest technology, agriculture, has also got us into trouble. What we're trying to do with agriculture is feel like we're in control. Not actually be in control, but feel like we're in control. And it has ended us up in a complicated situation. So the more that you imagine that you're able to control things, and the more that you try to control things, the less resilience you have for the things that cannot be controlled. And
Which is almost everything.
which is it's certainly everything important.
Yeah.
You know, you can definitely control the color of their sweater on your avatar in a game. But, I mean, something that I've have said about this before is, you know, we're facing as a species a huge existential threat with what's happening to the environment.
Absolutely.
And the technology's answer to that is, here's a thing that will draw you a picture of an otter driving a speedboat. And it sort of couldn't be more clear that what it's offering is mostly distraction. Some great stuff. Some genuinely great stuff. And if you look up the AI protein folding, you will find some amazing things that are, you know, incredibly inspiring. And I'd say exactly the same thing that you say about the knife is a tool and a weapon, and technology can do amazing things and also does terrible things, and we just have to decide what we want. But yes, that feeling that this terrible existential threat is facing us, as a species, we just dealt incredibly well with a recent existential threat. You know, we worked together as a global community of humans for the first time, which I found very inspiring, and I feel like I still don't hear about it enough in those terms. And yeah, a lot of new technological developments are saying, please look away from that. Please, you know, you don't need to think about it. Don't look up, actually.
Right. Well, one of the things is one of the columns I wrote in the Times, right as the pandemic was starting, I said, you don't understand how much technology is going to own us after this is over, because it's going to accelerate everything. We need to use it quite a bit, and they'll be richer than ever and then more in control of society and have no interest in actually running society.
Have no interest in running society.
So one of the things, although I find that you're actually quite hopeful about technology, am I wrong? Because one of the things you wrote, how does trust build between people? It is an offering and a receiving. He is putting yourself in a position to be hurt just a little and noticing that they refrain. There is never a good enough reason to trust anyone, except we can't live without doing it.
Yes, I am hopeful. I think there are certainly forces in the world that would like us to stop being hopeful. And those seem to be the forces that will pull us down into disaster if we listen to them. We have to keep holding these people to high standards. You know, this is why I love your work, right? You're somebody who speaks very truthfully about what's going on and doesn't get caught up in the hype cycle. I don't know if you saw, there was some, I can't remember what the name of the person is who did it. Somebody read through every edition of Wired magazine and pointed out that, you know, they've been in the same hype cycle for 25 years now.
Yeah.
And they never go back and say, oh, we got that wrong, actually. We thought that was the next big thing, but it turned out to be a pile of shit.
Right.
And you know,
I was just wearing my Google Glass the other day. I have it.
Yeah, you told me about it on Google Wave.
Yeah.
I remember that.
Yeah. It's still shitty.
Right. And, you know, that's all fine. If you're a creative person, you come up with some stuff that's bad, and occasionally you come up with something that's good, and that's how creativity works. But yeah, for the journalists to be somehow almost entirely in the pocket of the hype cycle, and to keep on saying, yes, now it is AI, and previously to AI, oh, you know, NFTs, right, crypto. Like, everybody I knew who was kind of over 40, who was looking at NFTs and crypto, was going, but why would you spend money on this? But, you know, you need to have seen a few hype cycles to be able to go, this is not what it is. I mean, for what it's worth, this is just my kind of finger in the wind. I think probably the big economic gains, and certainly gains to humanity, let's say, out of digital communication have been had for a generation now. I don't think there's more there. There's definitely more stuff in biotechnology. Things like, as we see, you know, now you can get lateral flow tests for things other than COVID, and we're all going, oh, that's cool. Monitoring, all of that stuff, that's very, very interesting. And I think that and personalized medicine, very interesting stuff is going on there. But I think the people who did the, undoubted gains from enabling us to talk to each other very quickly over the internet, I think we don't need anymore. There isn't anything more that you could show me that would make me go, oh yeah, that's got a real function in my life.
That's why they're moving into cars and healthcare and defense.
Right. Yes.
Why do you think they're doing that?
Well, somebody said to me, the reason that Mark Zuckerberg...
That's where the money is.
Yes. The reason Mark Zuckerberg wants us all to have the, glasses, goggles, and have...
Oculus.
Oculus, and to be in the metaverse, is because Facebook doesn't have a phone.
Yes, they don't.
Yeah.
They did.
Right.
Home.
Right, but it hasn't done it for them. So
No.
they need some hardware.
I have one.
How is it?
It's terrible. It died.
Right. So, don't believe their hype. But
so I want to get to questions from the audience, but when you think about the power of tech, I still think they're the richest people on earth.
they're the richest people out of the...
companies are the wealthiest on earth.
Mm-hmm.
It's unlimited power.
Mm-hmm.
It has affected our elections. It has affected our discourse. Certainly humans have a part in this, but it's even when you're looking at the current crisis in the Mideast, a lot of it is being fueled by the social media cycles around it, the misinformation, the reactive nature of governments and media to what is happening.
Yeah.
And so everybody is on this hype cycle in real IRL.
Yeah. I think this is what I'm trying to say, actually, about that. Issues around trans people obviously affect the lives of trans people very much. The thing that I'm seeing with it is that is now affecting certainly British elections and British government and various British institutions. And that feels like, oh, shit. The tech hype cycle is the same as that sort of algorithmic hype cycle of now think about this a lot, think about it even more. Here's something really, really horrifying to show you. Now get really angry about it. Now other people will get angry with you. Now defend yourself. And I feel them dragging more and more institutions and aspects of culture into that same hype cycle. And yeah.
So feeling hopeful.
Well, all right. I'm hopeful of people's capacity to understand this. I guess if I weren't hopeful about that, I would stop writing and just sit in the ashes and cry. And I think maybe something that I can do is say to people who, read novels and maybe, don't read tech news to go, please let me explain this to you. You can get it. You can follow it. You'll be fine. And at the end, hopefully you will go, oh, I don't want to think like that anymore. I don't want to be dragged into that cycle of increasing agitation and terror.
In which enragement equals engagement.
Right. Okay. So there is a child in my life who, because she has now learned about what engagement is, when her dad says to her something that is annoying, she says, "Oh, you're just trying to drive engagement."
Clickbait.
Right.
Clickbait. All right, go ahead. That's very funny.
Right. That makes me slightly hopeful. I think if we can teach the kids that. Yeah.
So I think kids are in a lot better place than we are.
Yeah.
Honestly,
Yeah.
I gotta say, my two older kids who are 21 and 18, they understand it completely. They understand.
So hopeful.
I feel they are.
Yeah.
I think they're very aware, and they use it as a tool.
Right.
And then they don't.
So we have just to try not to allow our institutions and our animals and our climate to be destroyed until they get to be in charge.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. My son is a computer science major at University of Michigan, and I said, "Are you going to do?" He's more interested in fusion and energy and all kinds of purpose-driven stuff, which is interesting because that has been a shift among the younger in tech right now. Is more mission-driven in real mission, real climate change tech, all kinds of stuff.
Right, not a mission. I'm going to be very rich.
No, not I'm making the ninth dry cleaner that you get from an app. No, no. And I said, are you not going to do AI for the summer? And so he goes, AI, it's just the internet for lazy people. And I was like, he's brilliant. And I was like, yes, it was interesting because I think he just didn't think it was that much of a leap.
Well,
let me ask you your last question is, who do you think is helpful in the real world, not your fictional characters right now in tech, and who is dangerous from your perspective?
Oh my God, that is a difficult, interesting question. I don't trust anybody who's in charge of one of those big companies anymore. I mean, look, for all the problems with Wikipedia, I think Wikipedia still holds the promise that the internet originally had, that it was going to be enabling us all to understand more about the world and to enable us
commonality.
Commonality, working together. Look, there are 1,000 problems with Wikipedia. You can go and have a look and see how many articles about men there are versus how many articles about women, and how many of it's something like 92% of Wikipedia editors are men. So that's a problem, but it's still, I find it a very hopeful place.
Version of it.
Yeah, I find that good. Who do you like?
Oh, a lot of different individual people.
Yeah. I do think that there are a lot of people who are...
Anyone working on climate change tech,
There you go.
I really enjoy talking to.
Yeah.
Because they have interesting... I had a panel of a very diverse group of people. One guy was working on small nuclear devices. Don't go crazy. They're actually interesting. There's a really interesting movement around energy that is
I mean,
interesting.
if we hadn't dropped a
someone
bomb
had-
with it first, we would all think of this as a
good thing.
Right, as an
Clean
energy technology,
Right.
clean energy technology.
There's another person working on piers. Water has a lot of energy. This is energy stuff. They originally had piers in the ocean, and they got destroyed because the ocean's pretty strong, and now they have energy creating things on the piers that we already have built, creating energy.
Right.
Another one's replacing a lot of the heating with these new kinds of heating units. Another person is growing strawberries in empty buildings.
Yeah.
In cities, becoming urban farming with
that's
very little water.
fantastic.
It's all fantastic, and it all requires algorithms and the stuff around healthcare. I just spent time with Jennifer Doudna, who does CRISPR.
Right,
and those
that's
people.
extraordinary.
They're extraordinary people.
Yeah, there's a wonderful site called Project Drawdown, which you can browse through it, and it lists projects that are being done right now to help the environment and specific actions that different governments and different companies could take. And I just put some of it straight into the book, because when you see how much sensible good work is being done by very clever, thoughtful people, you do become hopeful.
Yeah.
That our eyes are over here on who is Elon Musk going to call a pedophile this week? How exciting. But actually, over there are really people doing amazing stuff. There are some intractable problems in the world, but I don't think that preserving the planet that we all live on is one. Actually, it's not one of those wicked problems where there's, too many rights on each side. We all want a planet. So, yeah, right. So I think the problem is that we've given these people a lot of power.
Well, I think unaccountable, unelected power,
Yeah.
and the abrogation of our own government into regulating them is really
Right.
an astonishing thing.
Right.
I yell at senators every day.
Oh my
Like,
God!
what are
Can
you
I
doing?
come and yell at some senators with you?
They're trying.
No,
They're
no.
trying, but they get lobbied against.
Right.
Senator
Because
Amy
there's so much
Klobuchar, for example,
right.
$110 million spent against her on her very minor bills to do any kind of regulation.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know how much regulation we have in this country on internet and tech companies.
Is it zero?
It's zero.
Zero, yeah.
Actually, they have one that helps them, which is Section 230 that protects them from immunity.
Right.
Only them and Donald Trump
Yeah.
have immunity to walk down Fifth Avenue and shoot anybody.
Amazing. Well, the EU is getting on it, so
It doesn't matter.
no.
Sorry.
All right. Listen, you tell me what to do and I'll do it, honestly.
Okay, I will.
because-
All right, let's get to some questions. I think our government should be involved with, that's
Yes!
kind of all of our greatest. The internet was created by the government. The people who paid for it are the American taxpayer, actually, and the benefits have accrued to 26 people.
Yeah.
All of the benefits.
Yeah.
And, one of the things I always point out whenever I do anything is that if you have to understand who the greatest beneficiary of government largesse is the world's richest man.
Yeah.
He got a loan from the government to save Tesla. We did not take warrants in the company, but it would have gone under. Tesla would have gone under. And without the loan he got from the federal government, he's also the recipient of space contracts and defense contracts and everything else. So in many ways, he really is the biggest welfare recipient.
Welfare queen.
Well, I don't. I try not to use that.
Oh yeah,
term.
sorry.
That's okay. But you can. You're British.
I am British. I have a different. Yeah.
We're not very careful.
Yeah. No. Somebody asked me in an interview the other day. I mean, it was quite a hostile question. They said, you know, don't you think capitalism has done anything good? And I said, well, yes, it definitely has. But the point is that everybody understands that capitalism works if there's competition. Mm-hmm. And that's what governments have to enforce.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you know, that's why we have competition commissions and monopolies boards to break up companies and to say, this is amazing, please keep all your money, enjoy. Now we're going to break your company up into 4 companies that do the same thing that are going to compete, because that's how your company becomes...
That's how innovation happens.
That's how innovation... yeah, right. 100%. That's how it all works.
All right, so let's get to
some...
some questions from the audience. For Naomi.
Yes,
and by the way, this is a wolf and a rabbit, correct?
Yeah, a fox and a rabbit.
Fox and a rabbit. Excuse me, a fox and a rabbit mixed together because just very quickly because
there are.
Can you guys see it? You have to. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a sort of secret rabbit in there that you can see if you tilt it. Yeah. So this is one of the repeated themes of the novel, is about are you a fox or are you a rabbit? And foxes are
hunter-gatherers.
Yeah, hunter-gatherers are the people that we're all descended from, who were able to deal with the uncertainty and got up every day and went, let's see what's out there for me to hunt and gather. And then the rabbits are the people who went, no, I am willing to starve as long as I have a field that I can look at and 2 starving sheep that I can look at. And to understand we all have those tendencies within us. We have both of those.
Safety and risk.
Safety and risk. And also undermining ourselves by seeking too much certainty versus being able to accept that we live in a very uncertain world and dealing with it.
Okay. Questions from the audience?
I've stunned you all into silence with my... Yeah.
I have many, many more, but questions? Come on. One, right here.
I want to thank you both, and I was thinking this is just a perfect twosome here, because you both have a history, and I love the power. I love your podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Because you challenge power.
Mm.
You question power. You, in particular, call bullshit on power, which I'm eternally grateful for.
Yep.
But what is it about both of you individually? Why are you that way?
Ha. Oh, that's...
He's asking why we challenge power and what is it about us that causes us to do that. You know, it's interesting because when I went out to Silicon Valley, someone who lives here, Walt Mossberg, was my mentor, who wrote a wonderful column for the Wall Street Journal called Personal Technology. And the first line of his first column, which he was one of the first people to write about technology, I think, intelligently and fairly, because he liked some things, he didn't like some things, but he was his interest was in the audience, not in the technologists, which I thought made it very powerful. And one of the first line of the first column was, technology is too hard to use and it's not your fault, which I thought was fantastic, because that's exactly right. They pretend they're magicians, and they aren't. They aren't smarter than you. Let me just tell you, they know nothing about Ukraine, though they will tell you about their opinions on everything. They're now on Israel.
Oh.
Now they're experts on Israel. They were experts on COVID. They were experts on election. They didn't finish college. I really don't want to hear from these people about anything that they don't have expertise on. So I think where it came from me was, let me give you one good example. I was with Mark Zuckerberg, and we were talking about a photo he took. I was at his office. And he's a very nice guy. Let me just say, he's an earnest guy, very earnest. And he had taken a picture in Tiananmen Square where he was jogging across Tiananmen Square, and this is in my book. And I said, "Whoa, that picture! What the hell? What were you thinking?" And he goes, "What are you talking about?" And I said, "You're jogging across Tiananmen Square." Like, you just did an ad for the Chinese government. Sorry, Chinese Communist Party. One of the world's richest, most famous technologists jogging in Tiananmen Square. There's a couple things. One, Tiananmen Square. I know you were 12 at the time, but there was a guy with a tank, freedom, end of freedom, big symbolic place, Tiananmen Square. Now, I know you don't get that, but it really is like really important, Tiananmen Square. And I said, secondly, you were jogging and there's a huge smog problem in China. So now you're saying it's a healthy place to jog across the place where freedom was killed in China. I was like, literally, the Chinese are all symbols. They're all because I went to college. I know this, right? And I was like, it's propaganda. They did propaganda using you. And he goes, well, none of my people said that. And I said, well, no, they don't. They work for you. Yeah. Like, you pay them money. Yeah. I said, you don't pay me money. He goes, well, I think you're wrong. I said, well, you're stupid. I don't know what to tell you. Like, I said, does nobody question you? And then I went, oh, no. They don't.
No, that's power toxicity.
That's exactly. Yeah. And what happens is they become very wealthy and they have so much money. It's like crazy friggin' amounts of money. And nobody questions them because everybody has a stake in the game in terms of getting some of that money. And then they get yes all day. And so I think my superpower with these people is, and they think it's mean, some of them appreciate it, on the other hand, which is great. A lot of them, many do. I would say Steve Jobs did. He did. He welcomed criticism, even though he didn't seem like he did. He actually did. Satya Nadella, Tim Cook, they're all adults. They can take it. I think one of the things that I do very well is when I see something, I look at it and I go, no. And I say it to them. And I don't mind saying it because I don't want to work for them. I don't want their money. I really am interested in the audience and the people we're serving and the society at large. And so I think that's what it just bugs me. They're just lying to themselves. And I think that's the greatest thing a reporter can do is not figure out who's lying to you, but what are they lying to themselves about. And then once you got that in your head, you're like, oh, you think you're this, but actually you're this. And so that's what you think.
Not needing them is very important.
Yeah.
And also just being able to stand in yourself and go, here are my values. There's a lot of fundamentally one of the problems is, there were a lot of problems with organized religion. I'm going to come to that in a moment. But we replaced it with capitalism, and capitalism doesn't have values in that same way. And we haven't really, I think, as a society, had big conversations about now what are our values. We sort of say, freedom, but that's not enough. So no, you asked the question, how did I get like this? And I think for me, I was thinking about it. The answer is, I grew up a very Orthodox Jew, and that is a system that has beliefs about what women are, specifically. And I looked inside myself and I went, this is not true. When Orthodox Judaism says you as a woman, my mother believed this, that a woman's mind is not suitable for studying Talmud. And then when I went and...
Yes, we saw Yentl, but go ahead.
Right.
By the way, Barbara Streisand's book's in the front.
Right. When I went and studied it, I was like, this is fine. This, I've got a philosophy degree. This is not something, it's like you have to work on it, fine. Like you work on a piece of Kant, it's not a problem. And so there was a long process for me of going, oh God, they're just completely wrong. And once you can test it out against your own self, then I think, and you break the illusions of wherever you come from, you can, I think, probably never get caught up in illusions again. So that every single place that I come to where there seems to be some powerful set of just things that everybody believes, I go, okay, but probably at least half of that is bullshit. And it also feels like, for me, oh my God. Look, I was mentored by Margaret Atwood. I read The Handmaid's Tale as a young woman when I was still an Orthodox Jew. If you put The Handmaid's Tale into your brain along with Orthodox Judaism, something's gonna go boom. And so, I want to do that for other people. Is to go, I don't mind if you stay in the system, if you go somewhere else, but I want to show you what's bullshit.
Yeah. It's not a negative thing, too, because I think most people don't think I'm negative. It's actually truthful. It's different. I think if you're relentlessly negative, I love technology. And that's why the subtitle of my book is A Tech Love Story. I love tech. I think it can change humanity in really important ways. And so and especially if you come to it with an entrepreneurial personality, one of the things they can't, for example, when they go to attack the press, that's one of their many different people they like to, false things they like to pull down. I've created all kinds of media companies, so it's very hard for them to say I'm part of old media, right? Because I've done all kinds. So I think one of the things is most of the people who are thoughtful in the sector appreciate feedback. They really do. And they're worried about their power and they're worried about their impact. Others don't think about it. I think that's what's good about this book is I don't want to let them off the hook because they should think about it. I'll give you one other example. I won't tell you when I wrote it, but I wrote a column in the Times where I said, here's what could happen. Donald Trump loses the election, and in the months after, the several months between when the president is certified and the election, he starts to say that it was a stolen election and that there were lies. And he uses his power on social media to do so, and it flies up and down the chain of conspiracy theories, up and back and forth. That's what it does. And I said, and then in the end, he asked these people who have now become radicalized to do something about it. So I wrote that, and I put that to a lot of people in technology. And when I wrote this in the Times, it was 2018. I wrote it in October of 2018. When I wrote it, I got notes from the Twitter CEO, all of them saying I was irresponsible to suggest something like this could happen. And I was like, well, of course it's going to happen. It has to. This is the way this stuff works. And got yelled at quite a bit. And so, I think once you're right enough times, they tend not to do that. But you have to start imagining what could happen with all these technologies, good and bad. And I think that's where the power lies. And then they respect you, I guess.
Right. This is why. So the Telegraph had me write a piece recently about why are there so many fictional depictions of tech billionaires, and I answer it in the piece saying, well, why are there so many kings in the plays of Shakespeare? And they have enormous power that cannot be taken away by any vote. So what kings, sensible kings, paid, e.g. a fool, to be there and point out how they were being ridiculous? A lot of these people could do worse than paying somebody whose job is to, be the red team and go, this is what's wrong with what you're doing. That would be a very sensible thing for them. Maybe I'll write another novel in which one of them does that.
The Jester.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Right here.
This is going to have to be the last one.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you so much. This being DC, I was hoping you would comment more on kind of the role of government in tech, rather than leaving picture.
I do. I do. I've moved here. I lived in San Francisco, and I moved here because of the pandemic. I have a lot of kids, and long story, long lesbian drama. But nonetheless, I've spent a lot of time with Congress people, a lot. And one of the reasons I moved here is so I could explain to them what they needed to do. There's no privacy bill. There's no privacy bill in this country, a national privacy bill. There's no antitrust. There is not a rewriting of antitrust laws. There's not an algorithmic transparency bill. There's not anything. There's none. And this is 25 years into the most important industries in history. In history, the richest people in the world, they have no strictures on them. You can't sue them. Sometimes liability is a really good thing. And the people that are trying to do something, like Lena Khan, get relentlessly, I'm not saying she's perfect, but gets relentlessly attacked by the lobbyists. The lobbyists and the amount of money these people have to spend. And why wouldn't they? I don't mind that they do that, because that's the American way, right? Everybody has a lobbyist. But the amount of power they have to shut down this legislation is really quite vast, and they've done it so far. Now they're trying to do something with generative AI, and what has happened is a lot of these leaders have come in and said, regulate me, which is a new way of saying don't do anything.
Right.
We'll see if there is some, it seems like the only thing Congress wants to do is bar TikTok. That seems to be animates them beyond. But you saw the vice presidential debates. And even then, it's like, sure, we shouldn't have let them come here in the first place, but here we are, right? Because a bunch of by the way, you know who owns TikTok? A lot of Silicon Valley investors. In reality, that's where the money is. And so I'm only bleak not because I think that legislators don't know things. I think they're quite educated about it. I'm really impressed by people in government. I spent last night with a lot of CIA people actually talking about some of the misinformation threats in the current election. Or the head of CISA, Jen Easterly, fantastic. Or Chris Krebs, who got fired by Trump. They're all great. But I think the amount of money these people can bring to bear is really problematic. And the only things that are going to pass are things on teen addiction, or stuff that gets people exercise. And it's up to the citizenry to press their people. That's my worry. Nothing's going to happen because of the amount of money they have.
Right. And then Sam Altman gave an interview to the New Yorker recently, saying, he said, well, what's going to prevent this from going wrong? He said, well, the government has to tie the hands of people who are making AI. And you go, what kind of a sidestepping of responsibility bullshit is this?
And he's one of the better ones. I hate to say it. He's actually quite a thoughtful person. But it's not his job to do that. By the way, I don't blame these companies. I think it's our elected officials who spend more time, tweeting at each other and performative art on social media and not actually doing their jobs. And it's a real, you get rewarded for performative behavior and not through policy and legislation. But there are amazing people. I was driving up to Capitol Hill the other day, and I was in an Uber actually, and they were all out doing their press conferences. You know how they do those during the speakership races. I don't want to get into that guy, but creepy guy. And sorry, but he's very creepy. And I rolled down the window and I yelled, "Do your job!" But they don't. They just, the money is the power is arrayed against them in a way that you cannot believe. So. I'm going to ask you a very last question.
Yeah.
What is your next book on? You wrote about lesbians in a Jewish temple, which I enjoyed quite a bit.
Good.
Great. It was a great movie.
Thank you
The
very much.
Power,
Yeah.
huge hit, and then became a thing. I assume this is going to Hollywood.
Yeah, this has been
No,
bought
they're
by
not
the people
striking now,
by the
apparently.
people who did Hunger Games. So that feels good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, Nina Jacobson?
Yeah, yeah,
Cool.
yeah.
Great. So what is
thanks.
your next topic besides Court Jester that you just thought of right here?
I mean, that was a good one, actually. That feels like that's a small novel of. My mum died this year, and I'm writing something about her and the strange contradictions of her life. But yeah, I think, oh God, I might have to do something about what it means to have a Jewish homeland. Don't tell anybody I said that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but
That's a light topic.
yeah, you got to be brave. That's also the answer to this question. You just got to be brave. Like, what is the point of living fearfully? If you've got something to say, you've just got to say it.
100%. But we're all in a simulation, according to a lot of these tech people.
Oh,
So
well,
it doesn't matter.
Well, in which case you should all the more so be very, very brave.
Yeah. Yeah. Someone just posited to me, and I know we have to go, is that I just did an interview with Ben Mesrick, also a great book, just recently on Twitter, and that it explained a lot for me, is that Elon does believe we're in a simulation. He has talked my ear off about us being in a simulation, that none of this is real. And Ben pointed out that he thinks he's player one.
Yeah.
So that's why he behaves the way he is, because he thinks he's in a video game of the future. And everyone else doesn't matter. So he can call them a pedophile, or in my case, I'm seething with hate, apparently. We used to talk all the time, but now we do not. But it's interesting to think about when you think about what can happen to these people's minds.
That is, yeah.
It
well,
explains everything, video game lady.
Right.
So-
It absolutely does. If you don't believe it's real, then obviously you're going to be like the guy in Groundhog Day and just kind of, let me just see what happens if I crash this car, and just, wow. All right. So
All right,
this
there you
is
go.
100%
All right,
a book.
thank you. This is a great book, Naomi Alderman.